Hello there, my name is Triple S, and in this video I'm going to point-by-point review Season 2, Episode 5 of the Fallout TV show. Let's begin. Point number 1. So, last video I wondered how Cooper, Lucy and Dogmeat would deal with the Deathclaw. Or I should now say Deathclaws plural, as we see in this episode there's actually a whole pack. And they employ the time-honoured tradition of any Fallout player encountering the deadly creatures, running the fudge away as anyone would with no power armour or heavy weapons. Point number 2. What is happening to the sun when on the strip? Last episode, when Lucy took out all the ghoulified kings just outside the strip, it was day. But then we see Cooper, Lucy and Dogmeat on the strip and suddenly it's night. Now we see them here in Freeside right outside the strip and suddenly it's day again. I mean, what? Did they go and find somewhere to sleep for the rest of the night, then come back to where they escaped the Deathclaws to chat about it? Or is this those dang long loading times again? Point number 3. Funny little Easter egg reference here to the Golden Globe studio in New Reno in Fallout 2. Point number 4. I wonder why the management vaults Cooper found in California and Oregon were empty. Were they inhabited when the Great War broke out and the residents had just left before Cooper found the vaults? Or were they populated but the residents had all died out, just like in the management vault Hank is in, if you ignore the frozen people? Or were the vaults never populated due to it not being Vault-Tec who started the war, more on that later on in the video, combined with the boy who cried wolf effect resulting in not that many people making it to the vaults? Point number 5.
They're called Deathclaws.
Well, it's a better name than surprisingly smelly lizard monster ball things, Lucy. Point number 6. So the Atomic Wrangler hasn't just changed a little from the game, but a lot. And might even no longer be under the ownership of James and Francine Garrett, but instead now this guy, Shotgun Jeff, who tells us the Deathclaws on the strip came from Quarry Junction, and he channels his inner Ulysses,
NCR Legion, NCR Legion,
as he basically says all the big factions from New Vegas the game have been in control of New Vegas the location at some point or another. Deathclaws migrating from Quarry Junction to the strip I find quite interesting, considering according to Chomps Lewis in New Vegas the game they apparently don't like setting up near inhabited places, probably due to noise. So what would cause them to make the strip their new home? Well, more on that later on in this video. Point number 7. Neat to see this photo of Fake House standing in front of a big ass robot, which I can only assume the real house then used as a reference to have the portrait made that we see at Camp Golf in New Vegas the game. Point number 8. I've seen people wonder if this case we see Hank carrying in the past has something to do with the keepsake box Steph wants from Betty back at the Tri-Vault. Myself, I don't think so. I think it's just what the cold fusion is stored in, which is why Hank has it handcuffed to himself and is making him an assassination target. Speaking of cold fusion, I'm just going to unload some thoughts I've been having about it since watching this episode. First off, my thought that goes all the way back to the start of Season 1. In Season 1, Episode 2, we see Wilsig in an Enclave base working on the Vault-Tec cold fusion diode. The thing is though, he's working on it on his own. Why? If the Enclave knew this was cold fusion, wouldn't they have teams of scientists working on it to get it functioning and supply them with unlimited power? At first, I thought maybe the Enclave didn't even know what Wilsig was working on was cold fusion and he only knew because of Moldava. Like, she somehow found out he wanted to escape the Enclave and made him a deal that if he brought her the diode, she'd guarantee his safety. I mean, throughout the first season, I could only remember people talking about the Enclave wanting Wilsig because he was a defector. And Wilsig only escaped from the Enclave when he did because some guy found out he was keeping a dog when he wasn't supposed to be and pulled the alarm. But then rewatching Season 1 Episode 1, Quintus says to his men that Wilsig
has with him an object of profound potential to harm our nation or to save it.
So, if not indirectly from the Enclave, how else would the Commonwealth Brotherhood, who gave Quintus the mission to capture Wilsig, even know he was carrying the relic, as they call it? And why didn't the Enclave, knowing Wilsig has stolen world-changing technology, send out whatever forces they had to track down Wilsig rather than relying on bounty hunters like Cooper? Posting about this on the Fallout subreddit, comments led me to the conclusion that while yes, cold fusion tech is world-changing, it would only be world-changing for those who need it, like the NCR or the Brotherhood, whereas the Enclave, who obviously don't want others to have it, don't actually need to use it themselves. After all the losses they they've suffered throughout the Fallout games and the briefest glimpse we get of them at the start of Season 1, they don't seem in any need of generating massive amounts of power, because what would they even have that needs that much power? Maybe that's why they had to rely on bounty hunters to recapture Wilsig, because the days of the Enclave having a decent number of members and easy access to vertibirds and power armor are over. And my second thought, how the cold fusion diode even ended up in the possession of the Enclave, I will go into that later on in the video. And yes, I know I've said that 3 times now, but like the data which coalesced to give House the date of the end of the world, so too will all my data eventually coalesce. Point number 9. Seems here the lore of Vault 21 has been expanded upon so that even pre-war it was being advertised as a hotel, rather than just being a vault with a gambling experiment, with its top half being turned into a hotel when House made contact with its residents post-war, and its lower half being filled with cement after clearing out all its technology under orders from House so that it couldn't be repopulated. Point number 10. Not gonna lie, I'm picking up what Welch is putting down. I agree private companies shouldn't have the control that they do over government policy. Plus, then, in the Lucky 38, you can hear a woman say government should be run like a business, which anyone with a functioning brain should be 100% against. Point number 11. In this shot of Hank at the bar, we can see a sign which appears to say Dean Domino Lounge, a reference to the character Dean Domino from the New Vegas DLC Dead Money. And later, you can also see a Dean Domino poster when Lucy notices the back door to Sonny's is open. Point number 12. From the conversation Victor and Cooper have at Camp Golf in Season 2 Episode 3, it was obvious they'd met each other pre-Great War. Here we see it 100% confirmed, and why Victor mentions cold fusion to Cooper since he was present for the entire conversation between Cooper and House. Point number 13. Well, if it ain't the old chicken fudger himself. Love the interruption of him heading to New Vegas when the music stops and we see him fighting with a radroach. And while I knew from the trailers for this season that he'd be returning, I was definitely not expecting to see him rizzing up the mother-fisting goat Fisto.
Please assume the position.
And out of all the characters that could interact with each other, Hank and the chicken fudger interacting would have been far down on my list. I've seen people speculate that the chicken fudger might have survived Hank wiping his mind because he's from the wasteland, just like Gretch's son in Season 2 Episode 1 and the NCR trader in Season 2 Episode 2, and not from pre-war like the test mice and Stephen Winthrop. The only wrinkle I can see in that theory is Bill, the man House mind-controlled pre-war at the start of Season 2 Episode 1, who survived quite a while whilst under House's control. I myself think the chicken fudger coming from the wasteland had nothing to do with his survival. It was just that Hank had finally figured out how to work the mind control properly. Also, love the fake out camera movement making you think chicken fudger's head is going to explode. Point number 14. Going back a bit, on his way to test the chicken fudger, Hank passes a room of cryopods, 2 of which say Barbara Howard and Janie Howard, Cooper's family. With the pods being frosted over, we don't actually get to see Barb or Janie, so a lot of people are speculating that they're actually empty, which would make Hank's later threat to Cooper equally as empty. But if the pods are empty, then why are they closed and turned on? Which again is leading people to speculate that the pods aren't empty, it's just Cooper's wife and daughter are the ones in them. For some reason. The main reason a lot of people are thinking the pods are empty is because they think Barb and Janie are actually dead. Since when the bombs fell, Janie was with Cooper. If Barb knew when the bombs were going to fall, there'd be no way she wouldn't have Janie with her, probably already down in the management vault before the bombs even dropped. So how then can they both be alive, what with Cooper having to take Janie on horseback to Barb, so that Barb could then take her to the management vault in New Vegas, most likely via vertibird, all the while dodging incoming missiles and outgoing missiles and laser fire from House's defense systems? I can only guess that maybe instead of via vertibird, they instead took some underground bullet train to the New Vegas management vaults. And after giving Janie to Barb, Cooper just had zero idea where they went because he had no knowledge of this train. Hell, maybe he was even knocked out by security whilst attempting to follow his wife and daughter, waking up to both find them gone with no sign of where they went and that he's turning into a ghoul. What do you guys think? Are the pods empty? Are Barb and Janie alive? Could it even be a Fallout 4 situation where Barb and Janie left their pods years ago, so now Barb is an old woman and Janie is a young woman? Point number 15. Clark saying he needs to craft a weapon and grabbing a desk fan feels all too relatable, having played both Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. Good reference. Point number 16. Well, I'll be. Marjune and Barv are certainly characters I never expected to see again, especially in Vault-Tech's Southern California headquarters of all places breeding roaches. Point number 17. I find it interesting what these show's creators decide to incorporate into the New Vegas setting from Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. Cooper looks more like a Fallout 4 ghoul, whereas other ghouls we've seen look closer to New Vegas ghouls. Instead of New Vegas's Fixer, we have Fallout 4's Addictol. Harkness's Super Sledge and Lucy's Power Fist look more like their Fallout 4 versions. Instead of New Vegas looking Deathclaws, we have Fallout 4 looking Deathclaws. Fisto though still looks just like how he appeared in New Vegas, so there's that at least. And you can see a junk jet from Fallout 4 for sale. I wonder if it's the same one used by Biggie in Season 1 Episode 1. Point number 18. Don't worry Lucy, you definitely only shot him in the shoulder, so it wasn't you that killed him, it was gravity. Point number 19. With House saying he licensed software to West-Tech, with apparently a hidden backdoor coded into it, letting him access Suits of T-45 power armor, and that accessing Cooper's armor allowed him to also see the demon in the snow in Alaska, does that mean that every set of T-45 power armor has a built-in camera? Because if they do, then that would mean House might not have been the only person who saw the Deathclaw via Cooper's camera. Whoever's on the other side of the camera feed would have seen it too. Point number 20. So we find out here that House wants cold fusion so that he can survive indefinitely as essentially an AI. And we already know he can scan minds and upload them into robots, as that is exactly what he did with Jane, the Securitron. But I doubt House would want to upload himself into something as limited as a Securitron. I think he needs cold fusion because he wants to upload a scan of his mind into some mega ultra deluxe Zax supercomputer that only cold fusion could power. Jumping ahead a bit to the end credits animation, we see what appears to be House's cryopod open with his dead arm hanging out. Ignoring the fact that the room looks nothing like it does in-game, this will confirm that Human House is dead. But breaking my rule here to not talk about spoilers from trailers, we see House on his big screen talking to Ghoul Cooper. So before Human House died, he left behind a brain scan in his supercomputer, and all it needs is cold fusion to make House a player in the Wasteland once again, albeit this time as an AI. That's my theory anyway. I've seen many others try to incorporate House's body double into him surviving the end of New Vegas the game, and I just think doing that unnecessarily complicates matters. Since if you go with the idea that the body in the pod in New Vegas the game is House's double to act as a fake out, and the real House is in a different pod safe somewhere else in the Lucky 38, you then have to explain why the body double doesn't beg for his life saying he isn't the real House when you open the pod. Of course, the meta explanation is that this game was made long before the plot for this show was thought out, and the only in-universe explanation I can think of is that he's being mind-controlled. Maybe the double even had his mind whipped clean.
Whipped clean. Whipped clean. Why can't I say this? I got it. Their minds have been whipped cream.
And House somehow figured out a way to upload his mind into his double's brain. This doesn't explain though why, if the body is the double and is only meant to make you think you killed the real House, why does opening the pod cause a disconnect message on the big screen? Is this the real House just pretending to play dead? But why would he? Wouldn't he just arrange an ambush for whoever killed his double? And I can't see House playing dead to the point the NCR, Legion, Yes Man, or anyone else took control of New Vegas. A slightly different version of this theory is that yes, House's double is in the pod, but the only other House is the AI. There's no other hidden pod containing the real House. But again, I can't see this being the case because there's no way House would allow his double to control and run things, even if he'd somehow managed to overwrite his double's mind with his own. House would just never allow anyone else control over New Vegas, only him, either in his human form or AI form. Point number 21. I've seen a lot of people become confused when House brings up the date April 14th, 2065, 5:17 AM, because they think House is saying this is when his calculator, as Cooper calls it, first guessed the world would end, but then changed it to 2077 because Cooper's daughter Janie was born. This is not what House says at all. What House says is, 1. On April 14th, 2065, Janie was born, and 2. On April 14th, 2065 at 5:17 AM, his calculator figured out the world was going to end in 2077. April 14th, 2065, 5:17 AM is not the date and time the calculator guessed the world would end. It was the date and time when all of its data coalesced and it figured out the world will end in 2077. And it figured out on April 14th, 2065 at 5:17 AM that the world will end in 2077 because Janie was born on April 14th, 2065. And somehow Janie's birth influenced when the world will end, so House is guessing it must then have something to do with Cooper and / or Barb. Barb. Most likely though Barb, but not because she works for Vault-Tec, as House tells Cooper no one in that meeting, not him, not Big MT, not West-Tech, not Repcon, and definitely not Vault-Tec, will be the ones to drop the bombs. But if not them, then who? The other player House mentions to Cooper, of course, the one responsible for the demon in the snow, the Deathclaw in Alaska. Now, which Fallout faction is connected to Deathclaws to the point that they can control and use them? None other than the Enclave. At least that's the most popular theory right now, with a lot of evidence behind it. The Enclave, the shadow government, controlling and manipulating while staying out of everyone's sight, even House's. Influencing Vault-Tec to make each Vault an experiment to gather data so that they can learn from these experiments and survive after the war, by either reclaiming Earth or leaving for another planet, who took control of the Quarry Junction Deathclaws to send them to the Strip, either to stop Cold Fusion reaching House, or to protect Hank as he carries out his mind control experiments. Because maybe Hank being implied to be working for House at the end of Season 2, Episode 1 is actually a misdirection. What if he's actually working for the Enclave, just as it is implied Barb is? Because Janie's birth somehow affected the date at the end of the world, and unless Cooper has access to nuclear missiles he's not told anyone about, then it has to connect back to Barb. Barb, who works for Vault-Tec, but they won't drop the bombs. Barb, who works for Vault-Tec, which is being secretly influenced by the Enclave. In my video for Season 2, Episode 1, I said the shadow figure Barb looks at during the meeting might have been the real House. Obviously, we now know that makes no sense, so who is she looking at? This shadow figure, perhaps from the shadow government, the Enclave. This could explain how the Cold Fusion diode ended up in the possession of the Enclave, via Barb. When we see the diode activated in Season 1, Episode 8, it reads Vault-Tec, so obviously it was made by them pre-war and not by the Enclave post-war. Could Barb be selling House a dud diode? Or not even the diode itself, but plans for it, fake plans maybe, whilst sending the real diode off to the Enclave. There is an argument though for Barb not being connected to the Enclave, because if she was and somehow has influence over when the bombs will drop, why then did they drop when Janie was with Cooper, nowhere near the management vaults? The best answer I could find for this is that 20 hours before House's prediction of when the bombs would drop, something out of Barb's control happened to cause the war to start early. Maybe something related to Vault-Tec or China, or because the existence of the Enclave had gotten out. As according to terminals found in the Boston Bugle building in Fallout 4, thanks to the testimony of a highly placed anonymous source, the Boston Bugle has learned that the official designation of the oil rig is actually Control Station Enclave, giving credence to the long-running rumours of a secret militarised shadow government known as the Enclave that would take control of the United States in the event of a nuclear conflagration. Another possible connection to the Enclave fans noticed is when House says when Cooper bought his ticket to Vegas, the date of the end of the world jumped forward by 1 month. But why though? It could be due to Cooper doing something we haven't seen yet, like break up with Barb, or maybe it was because he ran into Congresswoman Welch, who is pro-government and against private companies dictating American policy. What if Cooper telling her to keep at fighting the good fight leads her to joining the Enclave, the shadow government, in her fight against the private companies, and her joining somehow made the end of the world happen 1 month sooner? Well, there you have it. Consider all my data officially coalesced. Moving on. Point number 22. This isn't actually the first time the date April 14th, 2065 has been mentioned in Fallout. In the Broken Steel DLC for Fallout 3, the Metro Authority Rapid Governmental Transit System, or MARGO for short, is a pre-Zax AI that runs the presidential metro, which connects together the White House, the Capitol Building, and Adams Air Force Base. And the date and time MARGO was switched on? April 14th, 2065 at precisely 5:20 AM. Just 3 minutes after House's calculator calculated that the world will end in 2077.
Coincidence? I think not!
So this gives us even more connections between the date the data coalesced and the Enclave. Because, as we know from the Broken Steel DLC, that Adams Air Force Base was taken over by the Enclave post-war, and also because the last president of the United States has been heavily implied to have been a member of the Enclave. As the Multi-Operation Directions and Utility System, or MODUS for short, an Enclave AI who controls the White Spring Congressional Bunker in Appalachia in Fallout 76 says that
the Enclave has counted presidents, members of the Joint Chiefs, and prize-winning scientists among our membership.
And again, according to terminals found in the Boston Bugle building in Fallout 4, 6 months before the Great War, the President relocated to a Poseidon Energy oil rig just off the coast of San Francisco, or Control Station Enclave as it was secretly and officially called. So just like Modus, that would also make Margot and Enclave AI switched on in the early hours of April 14th, 2065. Somehow, as a result of Janie being born, leading the Enclave to decide that they will end the world in 2077. Point number 23. Nice touch having House put on the helmet you see his body wearing when you open his pod in New Vegas the game, as well as connecting him to his network whilst in his pod. I assume he also uses it to do his mind scans. Which brings up a question of what will AI House know when he gets powered on later on in the season? Will he know only up to when House did his last scan before going into his pod? Or can the helmet still do scans whilst he's in his pod, so he has all of House's knowledge up to when he died? I myself prefer the former idea, as it will give the show creators an excuse for House not knowing who won at the end of New Vegas the game, thus continuing to not canonize any one ending. Point number 24. So I assume by investors Ronnie actually means the Enclave, and Barb was in charge of all Vault proposals, like all the experiments? Because if she personally signed off on all the experiments, then she is super evil, unless of course she was coerced into doing it. Point number 25. There we have it folks, confirmation that Future Enterprise Ventures is actually referring to FEV. And FEV is of course connected to the Enclave, though mainly post-war in the games Fallout 2 and Fallout 3. Point number 26. So I really thought right when Norm was about to black out, Claudia would return and save the day by knocking out Ronnie or something? But I was completely wrong, so now I'm wondering what's going to happen to Norm. I've seen a lot of people wondering if he's going to end up turning into a super mutant, and I don't really like the idea. Mainly because then the character of Norm will probably become just a speaking role for Moises Arias, with him being replaced physically by a giant guy in a super mutant suit, which I don't want to see happen. Point number 27. Cooper riding an atomic bomb like a bull is such a direct reference to Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, it's not even debatable. Point number 28. I've seen a lot of people wonder if Cooper died here being impaled on this pole, but I think it's pretty obvious in both a meta and in-universe sense that he isn't going to die here. In a meta sense, in that it would make no sense to kill off the ghoul due to the popularity of the character. And even if they did kill him off, his death scene wouldn't be over with as quickly as this. He'd go out guns blazing in an epic battle. And in an in-universe sense, we know how Cooper can take a lot of damage, what with him being a ghoul. Having been shot a bunch and punched by a power armor-wearing Maximus in Season 1 Episode 2, having his finger bitten off by Lucy in Season 1 Episode 4, and getting stung by a rad scorpion in Season 2 Episode 2. Cooper is definitely not easy to kill. Point number 29. Wherever the management vault is in New Vegas, it must be very close if Hank can get to Lucy this quickly. Or maybe the bullet train idea I talked about earlier in this video is actually a thing and it's still working post-war. Because New Vegas already has a vault, Vault 21, so unless where Hank has been working is somehow connected to it, how would there be enough room for 2 vaults under Vegas? And if it is close by, then why didn't House, after waking up post-war, force his way into the management vault to claim all the tech in there? Thank you all everyone for watching. If you enjoyed the video, and I hope you did, give it a like to let me know. And if you want to see more, then make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much again for watching. I've been Triple S, you've all been amazing, and I shall see you all in the next video.